Welcome back to a week that is chock full of intriguing new Starship developments to rummage through. There's a lot of really great new insights to dive into here, along with the issues of the Axiom 4 mission. With that, of course, loads of sweet flight action, so let's jump into it.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
This video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Hey, Marcus House with you here, and as we watch SpaceX tick off each step towards Flight 10, the excitement is already rapidly rebuilding, counting down to when we get to witness these scenes again. I'm just going to start off real quick here with this brand new footage from Cosmic Perspective. I've got a link to the full video in the description, so go check out the full thing. Over 7 minutes of glorious slow-mo magic. That exhaust shot there is unbelievable. Over 7,500 tons of force screaming out of the 33 Raptor engines there, and it almost seems relaxing watching it this way. Now, after Dan Hewitt mentioned here that SpaceX call the two sides of the gateway to Mars Pad 1 and 2 instead of Pad A and B, we'll just adopt that too for consistency. We left off last week having just seen Booster 16 preparing for Flight 10 with its static fire beautifully executed at Pad 1. The next day, the arms were already getting into position to bring the beast back down. Like all previous flights where they intended to catch the booster, they had it lifted right up to catching height on the tower. I suspect they do that to double check that the arms are moving smoothly with the added mass to make sure that there's nothing that needs attention. I imagine it's also a great position for media photos too, although nothing from SpaceX on that lift for now at least. From there, it was rotated and then began lowering to its transport stand. Now, things got a little interesting here. Normally, once a booster is close to a transport stand, or the launch mount for that matter, two alignment pins move inward to attach themselves to the aft end sides of the booster to provide that stability and guide it down into the mount. What was interesting here, though, is that at least one of those pins appeared to become disconnected as the booster was lowering into the stand. That resulted in it swaying quite a bit, and it even looked to have hit the transport stand. Not really something that you want to see after a successful static fire. Any damage here is more likely, I suspect, to affect the engine shielding rather than any of the Raptor engine nozzles themselves, which should be okay. A while later, it was finally lowered into the transport stand and the arms were unhooked. With it now free to roll away, it made its way onto the road, and as night fell, it was making the trip down Highway 4, where it was then rolled into Mega Bay 1. Later that morning, it was lifted onto the center processing stand, so hopefully it just needs a few touch-ups here and there along with inspections, and it'll be ready to roll out in a week or two for Starship Flight Test 10. Back at the same pad with no booster in the way, SpaceX could get back to work to prepare for this. They've reinstalled the scaffolding to let inspections and maintenance take place again, but so far nothing too significant seems to be underway, which is a good sign. Instead, all that glorious activity has been with the new Pad 2 as SpaceX prepares for the new missions that will fly from this tower using the next generation vehicles. Down below ground level inside the flame trench, everything is coming along very nicely. As you may have already noticed, on both sides of the trench, a whole lot of these small pins were sticking out of the concrete. That's for a very good reason, given that the pad is designed with rapid reuse in mind. Any concrete close to the flame exhaust would ablate away really quickly. Metal, on the other hand, provides much greater protection, and we can see that they have begun installation of these plates on the angled side as well as on the horizontal area right next to the bucket halves. Close by, the ground service equipment bunker is also continuing to be rapidly assembled. The already installed part of one of the booster quick disconnect hoods is set to become a bit bigger soon, with another smaller part delivered this week. Up on the launch mount, the three sides have now received a manifold for the water-cooled pancake. It was only a matter of time before the fourth turned up, and there it is. Interestingly, on the left here we can see that this part has been made a little smaller. The team has even begun installing cladding near the base of the tower too, so this is starting to be polished right up. The deluge pipework seems a little slower to come together, but just look at how complex everything there is. We have at least 3 wider pipes there, as well as this array of 6 smaller diameter lines. Now, the tank farm to pressurise the 9 big water storage tanks is quickly coming together, and close by, these 2 new small tanks have been delivered as well, so it's all just a beehive of action. Just looking around the area, the rest of the concrete pad is in various stages of construction, including cropped pile tops poking through some of the gravel. Before long, all we're going to need to see is the next generation Starship to be stacked on this pad, and we'll finally get to see it in action. Speaking of, the stacking of what we assume is the first next-gen Booster 18 is making progress steadily over at the build site. That started off with what almost looks to be just a header tank moving in, but sadly the top part there was undercover. Meanwhile, the rest of the liquid oxygen tank has had another 4-ring barrel added, and that was moved into the bay just a few hours later. With that tank now tall enough and the door opened, we could see the bridge crane lift in the stack of 19 existing rings to pick up that last barrel section. Now, it may seem odd because a quick observation makes it look like this next generation booster has quite a different size ratio between the liquid oxygen and liquid methane tanks compared to that of the current generation. If the models shared in the recent Road to Mars talk are fully accurate for the booster height, well, that makes sense. That's because we suspect that SpaceX has already stretched the liquid oxygen tank to its full height, while at the same time only extending the methane tank to the maximum that they can for the megabay, because that is only so tall. Once the taller gigabay is up and ready, they would then just need to stretch out the future methane tanks. At this point, they just need to structurally retest the methane tank area of the vehicle, all while keeping the oxygen tank pretty much the same. I think all this means that there's a pretty good chance that with this first vehicle, the oxygen tank will be filled a little lower simply to keep the ratios correct. Now, you may have noticed that we haven't included any aft dome for the next generation booster here. Well, that is for a very good reason, and it's because we don't think that there's going to be a dome at all anymore. Shaun, working with us here, captured these images of Test Tank 17 at Massey's while it was still frosty from a cryogenic test, and if you look super carefully, notice how the thick frost continues as low as we can see below those portholes. What we suspected previously was that there was a dome weld line above these. What we are looking at here is a potential 90-degree weld right at the aft, so that leads us to believe that there is no false ceiling. That's a huge change, and it also immediately eliminates the need to have the carbon dioxide purging that area. That doesn't necessarily mean that they can remove all of the CO2 storage though, because they may still need some kind of system to purge those smaller shielded areas for the inner 13 gimbaling Raptors. Now, while we are at Test Tank 17, after that long cryogenic test had been completed, SpaceX finally started to connect up all of the actuators on the tank, along with that, lifting the cap on top. Now, that should mean that they can test out the full flight simulations to see if the downcomer and the header tank assembly inside is engineered well enough to take all those flight pressures. Now, moving over to this area at Massey's, we can see clear signs that they don't expect to do further cryo-proof tests for the current generation boosters. It looks like they are instead moving full steam ahead with Block 3. All the main lines here, including the 2 big cryogenic lines, have been fully disconnected from the current quick disconnect system, and they've been moved over towards the 2 individual quick disconnects. The smaller lines we suspect will be switched over shortly. The booster cryogenic proofing stand to go with all this is coming along rapidly too, so it isn't going to be long until we see all of this taking on Booster 18. After all this is upgraded, I would expect attention to move to the ship cryogenic station for similar upgrades. It makes sense that this work is on standby for the moment, especially given that there is still the current generation Ship 38 to go through its cryo testing campaign soon. Now, as SpaceX looks to the future, we have some interesting news from Space Launch Complex 37 in Florida. This site, of course, was previously leased by the Space Force to United Launch Alliance, which most recently hosted the Delta IV Heavy launches, but that is now back under their control with that rocket obviously retired. A few months ago, SpaceX said that they had been given the right of entry for this site to conduct an Environmental Impact Study, or EIS, all working towards bringing Starship to this pad. Well, this week, a draft of that was released by the Department of the Air Force, and wow, there is some intriguing stuff here. Before diving into that, a quick shout out to Surfshark VPN sponsoring today's video. If you've spent considerable time online, you know how important it is to protect your privacy. It's constantly at risk, and Surfshark VPN is an easy and powerful way to protect yourself. But what is a virtual private network? Basically, it creates a secure tunnel between your device and the internet. That means your data gets encrypted and your real IP address is hidden so that your online activity stays private. It even restricts online online tracking from your internet service provider, and with an independently verified no logs policy, it's one of the best tools that you can use to block tracking, stop snoopers, and even avoid those weirdly accurate ads that follow you around everywhere. One of my favourite things though is that you can use Surfshark on an unlimited number of devices, so you can protect your phone, your laptop, your tablet, even your smart TV, all with the one single account. It's also fast. You can still stream, game, and browse like normal. Nearby servers make it super efficient no matter where you are. It's also a massive upgrade for your security on public Wi-Fi, which is usually a hacker's dream. With Surfshark, you're even protected on those sketchy networks that can appear from public locations. Think airports, hotels, or fast food spots. In these situations, I use it all the time because you never know what dangerous connection options might pop up. Sadly, it's easy for hackers to create false networks to connect to that they control instead. So secure your privacy with Surfshark VPN and get a 30-day money-back guarantee. Just go to surfshark.com/Marcus or use the code Marcus at checkout to get 4 extra months for free, or scan the QR code there on screen. Thank you, Surfshark. So yes, there's lots of great information in this draft document. Perhaps most importantly, they state that everything we're about to talk about would have no significant or additional impacts to the environment, which is great news. This study now confirms the plan that we would see up to 76 Starship launches each year from Slick 37, which includes 76 static fire tests of each vehicle, along with 76 landings for them too. That's a huge difference to Starbase in Texas, with 25 launches per year allocated. Now, for this to happen, SpaceX absolutely needs 2 towers here. Well, as it happens, that is exactly what they are planning for. The wording here is a tad confusing. They say 2 of each structure would be built at the complex when talking about the launch pads, integration towers, but also important, the catch towers. Now, we can confirm that 2 launch towers will be built by scrolling down to this diagram here. There is quite clearly a launch tower at the northern edge of the complex and also one at the southern edge. Sadly, the location of the 2 catch towers wasn't shown, but a bit further in the document it says that if space allows within the boundary of Slick 37, 2 concrete landing pads would be constructed that would then have the catch towers placed on them. That would be wild. Anyway, for now, the focus seems to be getting both launch pads up and running before deciding to continue with additional catch towers. Regardless, you could just imagine this: 4 Starship towers at one launch complex. Remember that Elon said in his company update the other week that they really need all the infrastructure that they can get to increase the cadence, and this is a big step towards that. Just think, with dedicated catching towers they would be able to also recover a ship while a booster is still being saved on the launch mount. Of course, the proposed action also includes a bunch of ground support equipment, as you would expect: propellant storage, an air separation unit, a methane liquefier, water storage, and a bunch more. If approved, they say that the first Starship launch from Slick 37 could be sometime in 2026, but that seems wildly optimistic at this point already. I would assume 2027 might be a more realistic target. Of course, there would be no way to build all of this up with that existing Delta IV Heavy hardware at the site. Oh, well, would you look at that? Yes, that was a quick and unceremonious end to the vertical integration facilities and the 2 Lightning towers with it. Now, not too far away over at SpaceX's Roberts Road facility at Kennedy Space Center, a few updates on that gigabay, which will eventually provide room for 24 work stands for production and refurbishment of Starship. A new filing on the FAA website states that 4 tower cranes will be used for construction of this bay, each located in a corner of the site. Once this is all constructed, we'll be seeing new boosters and ships rolling directly to the Florida pads. Until that point though, remember that SpaceX will simply be transferring the vehicles from Texas by barge. We had some good news from the FAA this week with the Flight 8 mishap investigation. They accepted the findings determined by SpaceX. The root cause for Ship 34's demise was determined to be a hardware failure inside the engine, leading to mixing of the propellants and, of course, an unintended ignition. A total of 8 corrective actions were determined and implemented before Flight 9, which happened a few weeks ago anyway. That flight, as we know, still has a mishap investigation ongoing, again focusing on the upper stage Starship. Now, getting back to the elephant in the room, after the very rapid spat between Elon and Trump last week, things seemed to quickly die down. From a public point of view at least, they were wishing each other well and whatnot, so where it seemed like SpaceX's government and defence contracts would be pulled immediately and all the other stuff that could come along with it, right now, no news is good news perhaps. As mentioned last week, Elon pretty quickly U-turned on the threat of decommissioning Crew Dragon vehicles and then later after that deleted a few of his posts on X. Admittedly, once you've posted to 220 million people though, they will not truly disappear. Yeah, he certainly regrets some of those. Anyway, the wishful thinking is that the two of them will just forget about it and move on without trying to politically destroy each other. That's something that would obviously only disadvantage the USA in terms of the dominance in space that they have and want to continue to have. We are all obviously much bigger fans of commercial space research and tourism, but the tactical advantage for the Department of Defense and Space Force side of the story is critical on that front. Anyway, we've seen no official word of changes to the plans with NASA, the International Space Station or crew rotation, so yeah, for now, let's hope it stays that way. Now, we were counting down earlier in the week to the Axiom 4 mission. The launch had been delayed, of course, with SpaceX troubleshooting an oxygen leak on the booster. Another problem popped up too. A thrust vector control problem on booster engine number 5 was identified, but SpaceX seemed to have resolved that one quickly. Engine 5, by the way, would be this outer engine here, based on SpaceX's user guide. Now, by Tuesday evening, SpaceX had announced that they were standing down from the mission to allow more time to repair the oxygen leak issue. Inspections must have picked up that this was a bigger problem than they first thought. Now, this mission is the debut flight of SpaceX's brand new Crew Dragon C213. This is the 5th and the last one that SpaceX plans to build, and interestingly, they've shared that it has a few neat improvements on the previous Crew Dragon vehicles. It has slightly better storage space and improved propulsion systems compared to the previous Dragons. I think it's also worth noting that currently a Crew Dragon is only certified to fly 5 times each, and Dragon Endeavour, the veteran of the fleet, has already completed all 5. The other 3 have each flown 4 times, so the certification will need reassessing, assuming that they all check out well. SpaceX is, I believe, working on increasing the certification to allow up to 15 missions, so yeah, I'm pretty sure we'll still see Endeavour flying again soon. What makes the Axiom 4 mission especially exciting is the huge array of science experiments along with its international crew. This mission marks a return to space for India, Poland and Hungary, with Commander and veteran astronaut Peggy Whitson leading the crew. I think it's just wonderful to see Axiom Space's commercial efforts partnering up with NASA, ESA, SpaceX and all the other space agencies involved. It's allowing all these nations to return crew to space, and this time of course to the International Space Station. Not only that, this is the most experiment-heavy Axiom mission yet, with around 60 scientific studies and activities planned for 31 countries. As always, the official material can seem a little corporate and dry, but the main takeaway is that all countries participating in these missions have been more heavily involved and also at a more affordable cost. Check out all of the research involved here. In particular, there is so much to discover about life and how it reacts in microgravity. Loads of medical studies on biology and lots of human study going on, not to mention the advanced material science that is continually making leaps because of all these research opportunities. You can go right into all of the details on these too. Radiation is one that always fascinates me, and this project is going to use a radiation monitor in a similar way to the larger one deployed inside the tunnels of CERN's Large Hadron Collider. Indeed, they want to refine those radiation models to better determine what sort of damage occurs to electronics and, of course, human bodies. We need to understand a lot more as we head further into space. Now, later in the week, a plot twist. It turns out that a new development aboard the ISS has popped up. Yes, the cosmonauts on board have detected a new precious signature in the Russian Zvezda service module. Until they get to the bottom of that, this has resulted in pushing the Axiom launch further down the line. At this point, they haven't yet released a new target date. We had the usual string of Starlink missions. Group 15-8 was off Sunday morning from Vandenberg with a young booster 1088 on its 7th flight. Not that you could really see the booster there in that mess. 26 was stacked on board this one, and it was Of Course I Still Love You taking the catch. Tuesday morning from Space Launch Complex 40, Group 1224 was off, and wow, SpaceX shared this video later of the launch with the Axiom 4 mission preparing to fly in the foreground. Can I just say again how much I am loving the 4K support on X? The ascent footage was absolutely beautiful on this one, comparatively a terrific day as the Florida coast shrinks behind. A set of 23 there at fairing deployment, and waiting downrange was just read the instructions as the platform for Booster 1083's landing number 12. I think it's worth noting that Starlink is now connecting more than 6 million users around 140 countries now. It really is mind-blowing how quickly the network has grown. No wonder we're seeing so many of them launching. Back at Vandenberg, the Group 15-6 mission was off Thursday evening with the drone ship Of Course I Still Love You having done a full turnaround in a little over 4 days, and then we were back in Florida again at Slick 40 for Group 1226 just hours later early the next morning. So yeah, another 4 missions done and dusted, which almost seems like a routine week for Starlink. Now, just like Rocket Lab's mission before last a few weeks back called the Sea God Sees, they were back again with an almost identical mission, this time named the Mountain God Guards. On board was the 4th launch for IQPS, the Japanese-based Earth imaging company. Another fantastic nighttime liftoff there from New Zealand, but check this out. About 2.5 minutes in, the first stage engine cutoff and then stage separation, but listen here. Yeah, we even got to hear the staging process live and even listen to the second stage ignition. According to Peter Beck here, they used the rocket's structure vibrations to recreate the audio, and it sounded so cool. Now, interestingly, the last satellite that they put in orbit was showcased this week with them sharing views like this from above. The idea with this Earth imaging constellation is to provide high-res monitoring of specific locations every 10 minutes or so, and they get to do this by being released from Electron at around 575 kilometers in altitude. Another textbook mission here, of course, with the satellite deployed at around the 50-minute mark. So yes, that was another busy one. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit subscribe so we get to keep making them. If you want to continue with more space goodness, check out this video here next, or maybe these videos over here. Thanks for watching all this way through. As always, my friends, I will see you all in the next video.